War Room Sports is brought to you by Audible.com. Download a free audiobook of your choice by going to audibletrial.com/War Room Sports.
I wanted to read another excerpt from Henry Abbott, who's a columnist for ESPN, and he said that the more America shuns LeBron, the more Black America retreats to his corner. In fact, as America hates LeBron, more and more Black America's collective hug embraces LeBron tighter and tighter. As a perfect example of Black protectionism. Athletes have always been inspirational figures within the Black community, and as far back as Jack Johnson, Jesse Owens, and Jackie Robinson often have taken the public racial hit for the team. So naturally, through the years, they've engendered an almost automatic protectionism response whenever America, whether justifiably or not, decides it wants to hate them. We saw it with Hank Aaron, saw it with Barry Bonds, saw it with Allen Iverson, see it currently with Michael Vick and LeBron James. And to your point, Dev, he also goes on to discuss the ramifications of LeBron making a decision. The way he went about it, he essentially communicated and made decisions on the same plane or higher than the owners, recognizing his true billion-dollar brand value as a businessman and not just a player, and that was spun as it's not only threatening to the establishment, but it's spun as being selfish, as if him looking out for his economic interest is a selfish thing, and that makes him the monster.
Right. Hey, well, let me give out this number real quick. If anybody want to call in and talk about the racial divide in sports and the issue of Black protectionism, that number is 323-410-0012. Again, that's 323-410-0012. Press 1, and we will try to get to you. I think we have a caller on the line now. Let me get that. Caller, you're in the War Room, 973. What's your name and where you calling from?
My name is Al Tariq from the city of Newark.
What's up, Tariq?
What's up, Dad? What's going on,
you family?
I was listening for the entire show, and I'm truly impressed by you guys, brother. I mean, you guys' knowledge of the sports world, and just wanted to add a couple of things to the dialogue. There's a couple of books that were written by some writers. One was Todd Boyd, Young, Black, Rich, and Famous, and Huberman, who wrote Darwin's Athletes. And there's another one I'm reading right now by William Roden. He's a writer for the New York Times. And they talk about the black community. Like if there's one black community, the black community's response to how media, which is primarily dictated by white writers, on how they're going to define what a black athlete's limitations are and what they can contribute to the conversation. I think black folks, to a certain degree, have always said, well, before you decide how we should look at it, we want our own opportunity to define who our heroes and sheroes are, also have the ability to define what we consider the moral right. And at times we've been guilty, because I know I've been guilty at times, of trying to give the guy the pass, even though I know there's certain things that we've done and I can say, this brother had a straight-up in moment, because we always have those in moments. But
that's a major acknowledgement, Al Tariq. That's a major acknowledgement, brother.
Well, can I ask Al Tariq a question?
Good.
Can I ask Al Tariq a question? You said you're from Newark, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. A couple things. First off, I own Dr. Todd Boyd's book, and it's a good book. But second, I just watched a documentary in reference to Newark called Street Fight. And in that documentary, I saw a lot of black protectionism as it relates to the mayoral race in Newark going in 2002, I believe it was, with Sharp James. Are you familiar with that documentary?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, I was in shock at how, black protectionism actually played a part in that election, and a guy who had been in office for so long was able to do the things that he did, but because he was from the neighborhood, so to speak, people defended him knowing that he was doing them wrong. And It's just funny that you called in because I watched that, not even knowing, this would be our topic when I watched it, but I watched it and I was like amazed at it.
It's interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting because, again, public media determines the debate or the conversation. So in that movie, The Street Fight, you had Cory Booker, who was up-and-coming mayor. At that moment, he was a council person in the Central Ward in the city of Newark. And you had a mayor who's been elected 4 times at the time. And I worked for the guy. I worked as his aide to the city of Newark, and he elevated me to deputy mayor for the city of Newark at the time.
Okay.
And a lot of the things that was dictated in the movie, of course, was shaped and crafted to make sure a certain debate was highlighted. Therefore, Sharp James was looked upon as being criminal. Cory Booker was looked upon as being Superman. Sharp James was looked upon as being, and there was no parallel. And I think that type of thing that we see constantly in media and almost like docudramas always identify where the debate is going to head and who's going to look like as a hero and who's going to look like a villain. So, I lived through that experience, and I'm living through that experience currently.
In your opinion, though, do you think that black protectionism played any part? Because outside of sports, it's in politics all the time. Like in the chat room, they brought up Marion Barry. That's another great example. This guy was caught doing what he did, and he still was reelected. So this happens a lot in politics. Do you think that it played any part in, since you're familiar with the Newark system, do you think it played any part in that?
I've seen it. I think it also happened in the Charlie Rangel race and also Congressman Towns' race, and where black protectionism is a major part of black folks' ability to say, well, we're going to define who our leaders are and who what our leadership looks like. We're going to make the determination. And I think, to a certain degree, it's kind of like a response, because typically what happens is that white media, the New York Times, the New York Post, Washington Post, Washington Times, they typically have a tendency to always highlight the wrong that a person does. Like, so Mary, trust me, I don't want a person who used crack in office. I got that part. But it's also an appreciation that
he's a hero in DC.
Oh, absolutely. And people.
I was gonna get to that. I wanted Tariq to finish because I definitely have some points about Marion Barry. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, but I think the point is that people appreciate what Marion Barry did for the common person in D.C. in terms of the indigenous population, about giving them access to power that they felt that they needed. And it's the same way that the Irish came up in the early 1900s, the same thing that black folks have kind of like hitched our bucket to in terms of how we're going to get economic power and also political power into the mainstream political system. And we do overlook the wrong that some elected officials have, and that's been a Marion Barry. And to a certain degree, it's been my former mayor, maybe, and also I see it in a lot in our current mayor. And when we overlook certain things that we know are commonly wrong, but because this is our champion, we're not going to allow somebody else to say you can knock out our champion.
Got you. Thanks for the call. Man, that's a great call, and I really appreciate your help.
Yeah, we really appreciate you calling in, Tariq. H.U. love, brother.
No problem, man. Hey,
thanks for the call,
baby. Take care, fellas.
No doubt. And we look forward to you calling in the future, brother. We need you.
Hey.
Balls, Brad.
No rainbow.
Brad, you want to say something about Marion Barry?
Yeah, I was going to touch on the difference between what I perceive, and this is just my opinion. It's not the opinion of the show, and you brothers will definitely speak up to your own opinions. When we look at both our sports figures and our political elected officials, I get the sense that, generally accepted behavior amongst the famous or the whether it's politics or sports or some other medium is that the flaws of a man are to be hidden at all costs. Even if he's has a coke habit, by all means don't bring it out to light. And what I see in the black community is, number one, an understanding that the pressures, the overall generally accepted pressures of being a black person may lead you to certain vices, may lead you to certain character flaws, but we separate and we differentiate between the person's ability to do their job, affect change, and be an agent of positive change in the community. And no example rings truer than Marion Barry. You know, he is almost a folk hero in D.C., and it's almost like realist, like, this is real talk. Like, Marion Barry's the type of dude, if you out in the front yard shoveling out your yard, yo, homie's going to take his tie off, roll his sleeves up, and shovel your yard up. And then he's going to sit on your porch and drink Kool-Aid with you. And then if your 40-year-old auntie walk out, he's going to smack her on the butt and try and holler at her. And the difference being, he understands, it's like, that behavior isn't necessarily befitting of an elected official, but at the same time, the things that he did weren't necessarily misappropriations of city funds or embezzlement or anything that put the city in jeopardy.
My question is, when you have that talent, whether it be politically, whether it be on the court or the field, so to speak, like how much because you have those talents, like, does that give us a reason to, like, take up for you in a sense? For instance,
I think sometimes from a political standpoint, like Brad was saying with Marion Barry, us as citizens of any town or city, we honestly want somebody that seems like they have our best interests at heart.
Right.
So at the end of the day, like Brad was saying, he would come out and shovel your snow with you, kick it with you, and drink some Kool-Aid with you. Whereas, the things that he does outside of office are illegal, unquestionably illegal. But
so it was on tape.
I don't want the example he demonstrated was totally wrong. So that's really the knock. You could say, yo, this guy's on tape, and my kids can see him actually freebasing. But by the same token, yo, homie did. Yeah, it's almost like the wrongs were outside of the world seeing them. The wrongs were limited to himself. You know what I'm saying? Versus some of the other politicians where we know are misusing the military or going to war for personal means. It's like things like that. It's like when you compare the two, and those guys get a pass because they fit into society.
Yeah, well, let me make a comment. In the chat room, Mopes215 made a great point. She said that it's sort of like when you're a kid and you talk about your mother, you can say something about her, but you'll be damned if anybody else does. Right. And it's sort of like the same thing. Like,
great point.
We can talk about
that,
like nobody else.
I mean,
but the thing about it is protectionism exists all over the place. It's white protectionism, female protectionism, gay protectionism. You always,
it's who you relate to.
I guess infancy is to protect our own, so it's always going to exist.
Sure. It's a human thing.
It's not going anywhere.
Human nature.
I mean, you know how many people I've spoken to, bringing it back to sports, who, used to constantly stick up for Pac-Man Jones, knowing that he's a knucklehead. And I mean, that's the epitome of it right there, because a guy like Pac-Man, who constantly goes out and gets in trouble, he always had that backup system in the black community where everybody's thing is, well, he hasn't been convicted of anything. But, how many times are we going to let him go out there and make a fool out of us? We keep taking up for the guy, we keep defending him, and he keeps getting into trouble. I mean, there's a truth to people actually being picked on because of their past. But, how long are we actually going to go for that?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think he might be a difference to somebody like a Mike Vick who made a mistake, did a debt to society, and is now trying to change things. He's changed his life.
Trying to turn the page on
it. Except for, when he had the little issue at the party that he had where the guy got shot. But, I mean, for the majority of the time, he's trying to keep his nose clean and rehabilitate himself, if you will. Whereas somebody like Pac-Man,
and he definitely looked like he's in the study room more for his craft.
Pac-Man. That's a great example because we can keep it 100 with Pac-Man. Conviction or no conviction, the dude had 18 indictments.
That's like over. Like, how do you protect
3 years of his career?
And the dude is paralyzed because of it.
Like, one dude got paralyzed. Remember?
People in sports, like for instance, me and B. Austin have had this debate like several times, and like let's talk about Allen Iverson. B. Austin is a self-proclaimed Allen Iverson stan. I think he may take a bullet for that young man, but because of his black protectionism and the fact that he relates to him so well, he overstates his game, so to speak. He told me AI's top 3 of all time, and he believes that. So it's like, it's just to the point where we look at these people, our so-called heroes, and we start, to actually make up or believe the myth to the point where it's crazy. It's crazy.
But a lot of people feel that way about Allen Iverson. I mean, he's such a polarizing. He's different because AI has a situation like when he came back. The first time he came back as a Nugget and he kissed the floor like that, like he kissed the floor of the Wachovia Center, I guess at the time, like that type of thing. Like he knew how to connect with a lot of the fans.
Exactly, CJ. If you were ready and willing to boot a dude at that moment when he did that, like something was switched off in your heart, like that's
why I mean I'll admit it too. Like it's hard for me to be objective when speaking about AI because he put him playing basketball for my team and the excitement that he brought me for those years of my life, I still remember him. You know, I'm still in the
it's to the point where people like overrate his game. People overrate his game.
Allen Iverson.
But I mean, Allen Iverson. Player, though. I mean, it all depends on what you're comparing to. It's not like he was a bum and people are like, AI.
First of all, let me say this: Allen Iverson's numbers support his greatness. So from a numbers standpoint, we can't argue his greatness because it's there in numbers. Now, I'll say this: as a young black male coming up in the inner city, I've seen dozens of my contemporaries that have been in similar, if not worse, situations than Allen Iverson, and to see him triumph and attempt to do things his way as a man, it's something that endears him to the public, it endears him to you, it endears him to me, because without the guidance and without a support system and with a lot of wrong decisions, dude refuses to lose, and he will die to win. And at its very core essence, that appeals to the value system of even the America itself. Never mind the black and white thing. It's like, dude, everyone loves a winner, and AI is one of those people that, so what if I'm 5'9" and 140 pounds and the size of a good-looking stripper? Like, I'm still gonna go to the rack. I'm still gonna go to the rack and dunk on Shaq, and Shaq is going to end up being on my on my Swami because he knows real recognized real.
We run out of time real quick, but I just want to say one quick thing. The last thing I want to say about this, this comes into play a lot when in the chat room. Everybody brought it up, and I agree. It's like you're not allowed to have your own opinion sometimes as an African American. If you say anything as an African American about our current president, you're automatically called a hater or Uncle Tom or Uncle Ruckus. It's like we're not allowed to speak on him whether we agree or disagree on anything that he does.
You're not allowed to do that with Donovan McNabb either. You're not
allowed to do that with Donovan McNabb. If you don't like Donovan, you help the Ku Klux Klan get underway.
That's the problem with black protectionism. That's the problem with it right there.
I've lost friends over this dude, seriously.
I understand that.
Why do people take dudes so seriously? Like last year, seriously, I lost a friend last year because I didn't think Donovan McNabb was as good as he thought he was. Brad knows what I'm
saying. You mean the boy that we was going to beat up?
You know what it is, though? It's just like we were talking about before. A lot of people look at Donovan McNabb as the epitome of what a black athlete should be. He's never been convicted of a crime, doesn't do anything wrong. He speaks, he's very articulate, he says the right things. He comes off as a confident. Well, I won't even say that, but the mass media, he comes off as a confident guy. And I think they look at you as, just like you said, it's almost like when you criticize Obama, like you can't criticize him, especially older folks who were just happy to see that we have a black president and could care
what he represents. It's because you're criticizing. It's not even about criticizing the man. It's criticizing the ideal.
Listen. We're running.
Kuwait is the war room with 5 nights at the round table, 5 Philly guys diversified and